Hey, if you're self-producing your band right now, you probably already know it's a challenge and there's something you need to hear. And yeah, you're probably not going to like what I'm about to say. But stick with me because this might just save you months of frustration. Most files or songs that I get for mixing and mastering are self-produced by DIY bands. And they all fall into the same exact traps. I'm talking about songs from seriously talented bands, like creative people full of ideas, a big vision, and total dedication. There are great riffs, really good tone, interesting layers, and you've clearly spent hours trying to get everything right and you care about the sound, which is amazing. But here's the thing, it's usually just that, parts. Individual elements that sound cool on their own, but when you put them all together, they don't really connect. What's often missing is the actual song, something that feels whole, something that tells a story, something that carries you from the first bar to the last chorus. Like a structure that builds tension, releases it at the right moments, and actually lands emotionally. And I totally get it because I've been there too. When you're deep in your own project, it's incredibly hard to zoom out. You've heard the same chorus 200 times, so it's almost impossible to tell if it's working or not. You can't really tell if the verse sets up the chorus properly or if it just kind of exists. Sometimes the bridge sounds nice on its own, but in the bigger picture, it doesn't really do anything. It's just floating there without purpose. And suddenly, even though all the ingredients are good, the song doesn't move people. It doesn't have impact. It doesn't feel like something you want to come back to. So let's talk about that, because if you want your music to actually reach people, to connect, to build momentum, and not sit there on Bandcamp with 24 plays and 0 DMs, then there's something you need to understand first. Hi, I'm Lucas. I run a mixing and mastering studio called LW Sonics for 17 years now. I started recording my own bands in a rehearsal space, and while I was doing my bachelor's degree in recording arts, I began renting out rooms for a few days at a time just to haul in gear and record other bands. And then I started working in a real studio, and after a few years later, that studio became mine. At some point, I rebuilt the entire place from scratch, only to eventually move into a smaller room again, because these days, my main work is remote. It's mixing and mastering for bands who record themselves. So I specialize in working with alternative and heavy bands who are self-produced and self-recorded. Some of them are recording their very first EP in a rehearsal room. Others are already touring, pitching their songs to indie labels and releasing on vinyl. But they all have one thing in common. They care deeply about their music and they want it to sound right. They want to stay in control. They don't want someone else to take over their vision, smooth out the edges that make them unique, which is exactly why they reach out to someone like me, someone who can step in, support their process, and help shape the final product without changing the DNA of the band. Over the past few years, I've mixed and mastered hundreds of tracks that were recorded DIY. I've heard everything from wild, chaotic bedroom demos to super detailed, carefully arranged home productions. And I've helped bands turn rough sessions into powerful mixes that got real-world results. Spotify placements, radio airplay, vinyl pressings, even awards. So this isn't theory. This is what it actually looks like to finish songs in the real world. With limited time, limited gear, limited budget, but unlimited passion and the willingness to go all in. And I'm right there with those bands, just like yours, helping them not just get the song done, but get it to a place where they're truly proud to release it. Not just something that's okay for now, but something that represents what they're really capable. I'm not here to tell you to stop self-producing. I'm here to tell you how to make it work. Let's start why self-producing is so appealing. You get full creative freedom. You don't have to pay for studio time. You can work whenever you want, re-record anything, change your mind, and take your time. And at first, that feels incredibly empowering. It feels like you finally have control over your own music. No pressure, no clock ticking, no one telling you to move on. But that freedom comes with a price. And that price is structure. Because when there's no deadline, no outside feedback, and no one helping you make decisions, the whole thing slowly starts to unravel. Not all at once, but little by little. I've seen this so many times. You start strong. Drums are tracked in a weekend, the energy is high, everyone is excited. You listen back and think, yeah, this is going to be great. Then guitars start dragging out. 2 weeks turn into 2 months. Vocals take even longer because suddenly everyone wants to wait for the perfect day, the perfect mood, the perfect take. And somewhere along the way, that initial excitement fades. What's left is a session with 60 tracks in the door, 5 different song versions, and no clear idea how it's all supposed to fit together. You keep tweaking small things, but nothing really moves forward. And that's the frustrating part. Because you're working, but it doesn't feel like progress. And here's the important thing. You're not crazy. You're not doing it wrong. You're just too close to it. You are wearing many different hats at the same time. You can't be the writer, the performer, the engineer, and the producer and still have the distance and objectivity to know what the song really needs. At some point, every decision starts to feel equally important. And that's exactly when projects stall, not because of lack of talent, but because there's no clear direction anymore. Here's something that might surprise you. Most mixing problems I deal with, they don't actually come from the mix. They come from the arrangement, from the fact that the song hasn't fully decided what it wants to be. And this is something I see all the time, especially in self-produced music. When you don't have someone from the outside questioning your structure, your transitions, or your pacing, you just keep adding things. You keep building layers, thinking more is more. But in reality, you're just making it very hard for the core of the song to be heard. Let me give you a real-world example. Like, no names, but this is typical. I got a session from a band that had this absolutely massive riff. It was heavy, it was tight, energetic, the kind of riff you want to hear again. And they clearly loved it too, because it was used in the intro, again in the verse, and then again in the pre-chorus, slightly revoiced. So by the time we finally reached the actual chorus, it had zero impact left. And I had to tell them, this riff is gold, but you're burning it out before it even hits. It's like telling the punchline of a joke 3 times before the setup is even done. And that's where pre-production comes in. That's where you test the structure of your song before you ever hit record. You map out the emotional movement. You make sure the chorus actually hits, that the verse pulls you in, and that the bridge changes something instead of just taking up time. Without that step, without real pre-production, you're just polishing disconnected parts. You're trying to fix a structure issue with EQ. You're mixing an arrangement that doesn't work yet, and no plugin can fix that. I've seen songs with incredible performances fall flat simply because no one took the time to ask, does this part belong here? Do we need this second pre-chorus? Is the intro actually helping, or is it just habit? These are the questions that take a song from a cool idea to, hey, we want to play this live every night. And they are the questions that bands often skip. Not because they don't care, but because they're too close to the material. They're emotionally attached to the parts because every part came from somewhere personal. But here's the truth. If everything is important, nothing stands out. If you don't build tension, there's no release. And that's what separates a mixable idea from a great song. Now let's talk about the other side, the recording itself. Let's assume you've got the songwriting dialed in. You know where the song is going. But now the technical side starts messing with you. And this is where I see DIY bands lose a ton of time. Drums are tracked in a space that's too small, or with room mics in a completely non-optimal position. Overheads out of phase, kick drum distorted and snare mic clipped because drums get hit harder in the heat of the recording than they do at soundcheck. And when you don't pay attention to that in the moment, you're screwed. You only realize it later when there's nothing you can do anymore. And guitars are tracked too loud or too quiet, picking up background noise, and now you're stuck pushing gain and dealing with hiss. No clarity, no punch, no control, and vocals sung on a dynamic mic without a pop filter, in a room with an air conditioner or even a fridge buzzing in the background. And half the takes are 5 dB louder than the others. Some start too far from the mic, others way too close, no consistency, no texture you can build on. You might think, yeah, but it's rock. It's supposed to be raw. Sure, but there's a difference between raw and unusable, between vibe and chaos, between honest and careless. And here's the worst part. After all that effort, you still don't feel like the song sounds the way you imagined it. And that's where doubt kicks in. You start questioning the song, you start questioning the process, and even worse, you start questioning the band. Whether the song was ever good to begin with, whether it's even worth finishing, and that's a dangerous place to be, because once you're there, it gets harder and harder to move forward. This is the moment when most bands tell me, we just need a better master, we just need a better mix, we need someone to master it louder, or maybe we should reamp the guitars with something fancier. But in reality, that's not the issue. The issue is you've done all the right things in the wrong order. You started tracking before really finalizing the structure. You jumped into recording without logging in the song's arrangement. You kept stacking takes and overdubs without checking what actually serves the track. You added layers instead of solving the root problem. And now you're stuck in a session that feels more like a puzzle than a song. Everything feels crowded, disconnected, hard to shape, and you're trying to fix structure problems with an EQ or timing issues with compression and arrangement flaws with saturation. And it doesn't work because those tools aren't meant to fix decisions that should have been made long before mixing even started. So no, the answer isn't louder mastering. It's not another plugin. It's taking a step back and asking, what's this song actually about? What's in the way? And what's missing that would make it hit the way it was meant to? Here's how I handle this when I work with bands like yours. First, I always start with a proper file check. I go through every stem, every folder, every detail. I look at levels, track names, takes, and session structure. I listen for phase issues, background noise, gain staging problems, and overall instrument balance. Because before we talk about mixing, we need to know what we're actually working with and what's hiding in the tracks that might get in the way later. Then I zoom out. What's the emotion here? What's the arc of the song? Is the chorus doing its job? Does it land? Does it lift? Does it deliver something new? Is the verse pulling you in or just taking up space? Does the intro help or does it slow everything down? And from there, I help you shape the song in the right direction. Not by rewriting it, but by making sure every part is doing its job. Sometimes that means suggesting edits. Sometimes it just needs small EQ moves or automation, and sometimes we pull something back to make sure something else hits harder. But always with the same goal in mind, to bring your vision to life, not to change who you are, but to amplify it. And here's something I've already come to appreciate over the years. When I work with a band more than once, when we start building a real working relationship, I usually get involved way earlier in the pre-production phase, before anyone hits record. And that's where the real magic happens. That's when we sit down and talk about structure, pacing, dynamics, about what the song actually wants to become. And that changes everything. Because when you make those decisions early on, everything else falls into place. Recording becomes faster, mixing becomes cleaner, and the song hits harder because the foundation is now solid. What I see again and again, once a band has gone through the process with me, the next sessions are on a completely different level. The takes are tighter, the arrangements are more focused, and the intention is clear. And most of the typical mistakes just don't happen anymore. Those bands show up ready. They know what they want and they trust the process. They start getting better gigs. They start to hit the stage at big festivals. Their releases get playlisted and they actually start building momentum that lasts. That's the long game. That's the difference between making songs and building a career. And I love being part of that. So no, I'm not here to fix your song. I'm here to help you finish it properly. So if you're in the middle of a production right now and you're feeling a bit stuck, maybe you've recorded something but you're not sure if it's working, maybe you're halfway through mixing and the track still doesn't hit like it should, or maybe you've got a bunch of demos and just need someone to tell you where to start, I've opened up 3 slots to give you honest feedback for free. It's just a way for you to get real professional input on what you're working on. Your recordings, your demos, your sessions, whatever stage you're at. Send me the track and I'll listen. I'll tell you what's working, what's holding it back, and what I would focus on next. So no fluff, no automated reply, just actionable, honest feedback from someone who does this every day. And yeah, if it makes sense to work together after that, great. But if not, you'll still walk away knowing exactly what your next move should be. Here's the catch though. These 3 slots are limited. I can't do this for everyone because I'm in the studio full time. So if you want in, DM me now or use the link below. Once the slots are gone, that's it. So, self-producing your own band is one of the best and hardest things you can do. You've got full control, but also full responsibility. And that can get heavy, especially when things don't come together the way you imagined. But the good news is, you don't have to carry all that alone. You're not the first to run into these challenges, and you won't be the last. I've been there, and I'm here to help. If this video helped you in any way, subscribe or just stay connected. Check out the other videos on the channel. Maybe one of them speaks directly to where you're at. And maybe I'll hear your track next. So see you soon. Bye bye.